Chapter 16, guiding people from hurt to hope. Guiding people from hurt to hope is a hugely important part of what we do as a clinician. Healthcare, if we're selling anything, it should be hope, empowerment, self-efficacy, resilience. But there's a problem with when we view things in the world, how we perceive. Remember, pain is perception, but our perception can change. Let me give you an example. Those of you who like cats will be able to tell me what this cat wants. By looking at this cat's face, you'll be able to tell me exactly what that cat wants. Those of you who've got it correct will have guessed correctly. This cat wants food. Look how hungry this cat is. Okay, so the next cat. What does this cat want? Maybe this cat wants a cuddle. You're right. Yeah, look, this cat is like, oh, I really want some attention and love. Don't worry. If you're freaking out, this is exactly the same cat. What about this? If I was scratched when I was a 7-year-old child by a cat that just looks like this at my friend's birthday party, how does this same cat look now? Die, human slave. This is the sinister menace that's going to scratch your eye out. The Talmud says this: we don't see things the way they are. We see things the way we are. If I'm hungry, the cat's hungry. If I want a cuddle, the cat wants a cuddle. If I was scratched as a child by a cat like this, I now see the cat as a threat. This is part of my experience. So I often get this point across to patients. People aren't distressed by things. They're distressed by their view of things. I see patients quite often who they struggle to bend, with back pain, and they're really sort of finding it hard to do this. But if you get them to think about when they were a 7-year-old kid and they went to the park with their friends and they played football and they took off their jumpers and they threw them on the floor and they were playing football and bending. Bending was a fun activity. Bending was a normal, fun activity. Just like the cat who's hungry or the cat who wants a cuddle. But then 5 years ago, as a 40-year-old person, they had some back pain and it's lingered on and kept going. That back pain, that bending, has now produced the scary cat image. It's exactly the same thing. Bending is no different as a concept. What's changed is your perception of bending. And that's something really important to try and get across to patients. And I teach people on courses how to do that with a lot of different ideas and techniques. Maybe we do need to change the way we think about pain perception, moving people from nocebo to placebo, from hurt to hope. So I produced this article last year with a colleague of mine, Professor Stephen Loftus, who's a doctor in the United States of America. And we weren't trying to say in this article that you have to stop saying the words in red, but we do know that these words can be very harmful. These words can start to create problems for people that will last forever. So what we were trying to say in this article, and it's a viewpoint article, so it's up for discussion, is these words are harmful. The evidence supports the fact that these words can be very harmful. Maybe we need to think about some alternatives. Maybe we need to acknowledge that these words are out there. We cannot stop these words. These words are in the public consciousness. But maybe we have to understand that they can be a problem and that maybe we need to find a solution, maybe another way. So for example, chronic degenerative changes, like we said before, I have chronic degenerative changes here. This bald patch is chronic degenerative changes. But of course, we don't think of it in those terms. We think of it as something that's normal as you get older as a male. It's normal and you either accept it and you learn to manage it or you don't. You struggle with it and you start trying to cover it up or doing something with it. So it's important to think about changing the way people see things, and language is a crucial part of that because words are a really important method of how we help or harm people. With this in mind, I use this idea with patients to shift them from hurt to hope. Boats are really safe if they're in port. Like you, I'm sure I see lots of patients who they tell me how they haven't been out of the house for a long time, or they stopped work, or they've stopped sport, or they've stopped enjoyable, nice things in life. And I say to them, look, what you're saying essentially is you've been in port for the last 6 months, 12 months, 5 years maybe. Boats are really safe if they're in port. This is a really nice place. It's great. But that's not what they're designed for. As C.S. Lewis once said, a smooth sea never made a skillful sailor. You're going to have to be prepared to go out when it's stormy, when it's choppy, when it's hard, challenging. If it's too easy, it doesn't work. If you try to improve your cardiovascular fitness and you don't sweat, you don't get better. You've got to go out. When I use this with patients, I always try to steer them towards a way of thinking. So I say, what happens to a boat's steering column if it stayed in port for 6 months? Is it nice and loose? And they say, oh, no, it's stiff. It gets stiff. Yeah, stiffness, not this idea of rust. You don't want to give patients a notion that they're rusty. That's not a very helpful idea. But this idea of stiffness and tightness, and the opposite is true. Motion is lotion. Like the boat, you are designed to be out, exploring the world, doing things, moving around. So I think this model is a really nice way of getting people to think about how your emotions, how your mood impacts on your performance. This comes from Dr. Alan Watkins in 2013. And Alan Watkins says that if we look at the top right-hand corner of this, if you're somebody who's running on negative emotions, lots of cortisol, and you're active, you're switched on, lots of adrenaline, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're like this. Do you see patients in this mood who remain in this mood? I do. Is it easy to help these people? It's almost impossible. It's really hard. And that's because performance does not take place when you're angry and frustrated. Equally, if you look at the bottom left quadrant, if you're somebody who, rather than being switched on with adrenaline, you're switched off. Lots of acetylcholine, lots of cortisol still. We're still negative, pessimistic. You're this person we saw earlier on. Yeah, just lie me down and push on my back, do la baguette magique. This does not lead to good performance. Performance is much better when we shift people across over towards the left-hand side of this model, when we move people towards positivity, dihydroepidendosterone, and noradrenaline, motivated, enthusiastic, relaxed. I often show patients videos of Lionel Messi, Roger Federer, Usain Bolt, and I say, what's the one thing that these people have in common? Relaxed, positive, hopeful. I think about this. I'm a Liverpool football fan, so I'm very happy today because last night we beat Barcelona 4-0 and went into the Champions League final. Very happy. But Jurgen Klopp, as a positive, optimistic character, he gets great performance from his players. He is down in that bottom left-hand corner. I sometimes refer to clinical practice as Bob Marley therapy. Relaxed, informal, positive, hopeful. If we think about other football managers, I'm not a Manchester United supporter, so Jose Mourinho. Jose Mourinho is over on the right-hand side of this model. He's angry, doesn't get very good performances from his players. So shifting people from pessimism to optimism is crucial.